will do a full trip overseas with proper testing as I do with my other videos. Wow, I think I did quite well.
Whoa, nice.
Hi guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. So if you saw my last video on the new VOIGTLANDER Nocturne 50mm f1, I promised I'd do some real life testing. And so this video is me going to Poland, and I photographed 9 models in 3 days and then did some real life kind of walkabout testing and also some night testing. Stay with me and I can show you all of that. And then if you stay with me until the end, I'll also do a quick comparison 51.2 against the new 51.0. Is it worth spending the extra money for the 51.0 or getting on the waiting list? I believe they're already sold out. Or is the 1.2 good enough for your needs? Let's find out. So the camera I was using in Poland was the Leica SL for 95% of the photos, and also shot a bit of film with the Leica M3. Here's me using both cameras, and you can see that this is my setup, mixing daylight and continuous light, and just using the lens at this point wide open. I noticed that it's very easy to miss focus, even with a great viewfinder like the Leica SL, as you can see in those 2 photos if you pause it. That's my light that I use. It's a Sekani X60 V2. See a link below in my kit list if you want to know the equipment that I use. And there's my cameras. Here's a few more colour sample photos before I switch to black and white for most of the trip. I think the colours are true to life, and the rendering of this lens is really nice. Now switching to black and white, using the same lighting. I think it's in the evening now, so this is mostly with my Sekani X60 V2. These photos are all shot in RAW, by the way, with my Mr. Leica SL preset supplied. Me fine-tuning the pose before getting my shot. This type of lighting has got a lower output, so it's great for these fast lenses. I was also using the VOIGTLANDER Nocturne 35 1.2, so that video also to follow. And then here's me using just daylight out on the balcony. I'm not sure quite how I ended up under the table, but here's me using the lens, probably its closest focus distance, 0.9 meters. Oh, and also the M3 as well, with the second model. And there's some sample photos. Just to note, I was using the close focus adapter on the SL, so I could get close to 0.9 meters if I needed to, but just to be aware for those of you that are shooting with an M camera, that is one limitation. These photos are still shot at f1 at this stage, and here's me doing a selfie so I remember what lens I used. There is no EXIF data on this lens. On to the next model, I was shooting into like a busy background just to see how much I could blur it out. And this is actually part of one of my Mr. Leica photography workshops. Thomas, the guy you can see on the screen, joined me from the Netherlands, and we met in Gdansk, and then I organised the models and then showed him basically what I do with my posing and the lighting and how I basically make my photos. And then he was then able to replicate it with his own camera. You don't need a Leica to do my workshops. He was shooting Nikon and Leica, Nikon digital and then Leica for film. We both had our M3s out. You can see me giving the feedback to the model so she can see the photos we're getting. And you can see me doing the posing. So I'm trying to show the pose I'm trying to create for her. So sometimes it's easier to show them physically. And often in the countries I go to, they don't speak English. Here's now some example photos after me doing my posing attempts with the lens again wide open and blowing out the background. The model seemed fairly happy with the photos, so I'm guessing it's a good lens. Back out on the balcony now, Thomas in action, and you can see the rendering from the background and a bit of bokeh balls. Another action shot, a very simple lighting to start off with window light, and now this is with the continuous lighting once the light levels had dropped. Oh, this is the same day, but this time shooting obviously outside. For the workshops, I have one model in the morning and one model in the afternoon, so I was showing Thomas how I shoot into the light. And then also that allowed me to then test the lens for flare. You can see we were quite lucky with the weather to have some sunshine compared to when I was there in December. That said, it was still pretty cold, so that's why most of the photo shoots were inside. Being outside, you can see the rendering of the lens a bit better though, so it does have some big advantages. Here you can see me trying to blur the foreground. And here's me shooting directly at the sun. You can see the drop in contrast and then change the angle slightly, and that's the correct contrast that you would see without flare on the lens. Here you can see more flare patterns, both in black and white, and you can see now in colour how it would look with the flare not using a lens hood. Here's me back inside for something a bit warmer. I do photo shoots from 9 AM till 6 PM most days, so I kind of book myself up back to back. Here's me using window light again, and I was using a kicker light to enhance the legs. The f1 maximum aperture was really useful on the balcony because it could just blur out completely the building site in the background. I found 50mm a bit too tight for some shots, so I was switching out to the 35, but these 2 photos are with the 50. If you saw my Light Meter video, you can see the TTR stand Light Meter on the table. At this point, I was just copying the settings from the digital camera onto the M3. So some photos are shot at 1.4 and f2, and then I just use the same aperture on the Leica M3 camera. Those photos are obviously shot with window light, and this is the same kitchen now in the evening, shot with my LED light. And here on the balcony to do some bokeh testing, and then back now inside. These might be stopped down looking at the rendering in the background. And then another model, I think another day, back to sunshine. So I'm using window light, and then I'm also using a little LED light to kind of give a bit of a kicker. I do this quite a lot. I've sped this up just to show the kind of the flow posing. Therese is a ex-catwalk model, so she's awesome. I've known her for about 8 years, so we work really well together. I did use the 35mm for some of these, which we'll see in a future video, because 50 is a bit too restricted to get her legs and heels and everything else in for some of the photos. This is 50, but that's me standing further back. Now me balancing again on the settee. That's 50. You can see it's quite a tight crop, and then you may have seen on social media some wider shots with 35. I will say that the models really like this lens for the shallow depth of field and the soft rendering on their skin. They found the pictures quite flattering. This is now outside in Gdansk to try to do some more useful test photos for you guys, so that you can see the heavy vignetting. Some touristy shots there, shooting about f4 to try and get more sharpness and less vignetting. I found the colours to be really nice, and with my preset applied they added a bit of extra vibrance. Shooting out at night, this lens is really good for night shoots, obviously with an f1 aperture. Here's photo wide open, and then the same photo stopped down, you can see the improved sharpness. Again here, shot wide open, and if you watch the street lights, you see really nice sun stars at I think 1.4 or f2. And then for any of you M shooters, I also had my Leica M240 with me. You can see I was using it with the EVF to get accurate focusing at f1. Really nice rendering, the same as on the SL, but you can see the banding here at ISO 1600. There's a photo of the M240 versus the SL as a comparison. And then for completeness, I also use the Lumix S5 camera. Back in the UK now with Stacey, and you'll see how the photos compare with the S5, and to me they're no different from shooting with the Leica SL. I just prefer the SL for kind of handling purposes. And then I also did a UK workshop yesterday, and so I use the Leica CL crop sensor camera, and you'll see with the crop sensor you have no vignetting issues because it's only using the center of the frame, and it can take really clean looking images like this. So I was really happy with this shot. And then to try and give you a complete review, Flaghead Photographic also kindly sent me the 50 f1.2 lens so I could see how they compare. So here you can see the vignetting on the 50 f1, and again at 1.4. Here now there's the vignetting on the 50 1.2 wide open and then stopping down, and then on the 50 f1 and then stopping down. And then here they are side by side. You can see the 1.2 is less bright in the center but less dark in the corners. And then viewing the lenses side by side, you can see the 50 1.2 on the left is both shorter and a smaller filter size, being 52 rather than 62 on the f1. And then when it comes to image quality, I was really struggling to see much of a difference between the two lenses. So here's me first shooting the f1 on the SL and using my similar window and another different model. And first we'll see these example photos with the 50 f1 lens at f1, and take note of the dark corners. And now you'll see 50 f1 versus 1.2. Feel free to pause it if you can't see a difference, but on the right you should see darker corners, but otherwise reasonably similar. And then I wanted to do my usual center sharpness testing back in the garden, so I was using my Leica R7 as my model. And then here's the 50 f1 stopping down, now the 50 1.2 stopping down. See the nice bokeh from both lenses. And then here they are side by side. So one thing to note, because the 51.2 will focus as close as 0.7 meters versus 0.9 meters, you can get a pretty similar shallow depth of field from both lenses. And so what is my verdict? Can I still recommend the VOIGTLANDER 50 1.0, or is the 50mm 1.2 good enough? It depends what you want really. And the truth was, I really didn't know myself which was the best. There's only one thing for it. I needed to do more final selfie testing before making my conclusion. So here's me shooting both lenses at the mirror, and then here's the results from both lenses side by side. It looks from my crude testing that the 1.2 has got better contrast, as you can see, and both lenses seem more than sharp enough at f2. Maybe make up your own mind which lens you think is best. But for most people, and for myself, I don't really think I'd notice a difference between the 1.2 and the 1.0 in kind of real life testing. I really struggled to see the difference when I was going through the pictures to make this video. The only real giveaway for the f1 is the extra darkening in the corners of the images, the heavy vignetting. That's the only real way I could tell the difference where you're not really pixel peeping. if you just need a fast 50, I think the 51.2 is still an excellent lens. And in terms of price, this is half the price and I think 40% lighter in terms of weight. I'll link the 51.2 video at the end, and I'll also link the 50 f1. And with that said, if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button and feel free to subscribe below if you've not already done so. As I say, there is a monthly giveaway, so you've got nothing to lose, you can only win. As always, a massive thank you to my amazing patrons, and you'll see a lot of these video clips, the full versions, on Patreon. The Poland Leica workshop was a real success, and so I'm going to run more Poland workshops. So if you live in Poland and you want to travel to Gdansk to meet me, I can arrange the models. The link's below as usual. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.